She was an only child, working under the hot sun at a construction site just to feed her sick parents. When she lost them both within days, her mother's sister promised her a better life in Ghana. But instead of a good job, she was thrown into the streets for refusing to sleep with men. Starving and hopeless, she picked up a rope to end her life until she found a man in a suit, bleeding on the road. Saving him would change her world forever. But when she sees her aunt again in the most unexpected place, her heart freezes. What happens next will shock you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. The sun was barely up, yet Adaora was already on her way to the construction site. She wore a faded t-shirt, torn jeans, and old slippers covered in dust from the day before. Her slim arms carried a metal headpan filled with cement as she walked past a group of men mixing sand. "Ah, Adaora," one of them called out, grinning. "You're too fine for this kind of work. Leave this job for us men now." Another man laughed loudly. "See as you carry block like a man. This one no be woman worko." Adaora forced a smile and kept walking. She had heard it all before. Every day someone had something to say about her being there. They didn't understand that she had no choice. Beauty could not feed her parents, and teasing would not pay hospital bills. The foreman shouted orders, and Adaora bent down to lift a heavy concrete block. The rough edges scraped her palms, but she ignored the pain. Sweat ran down her forehead, dripping into her eyes as she carried it to the other side of the site. By midday, her clothes were soaked in sweat, and cement dust clung to her skin. She sat on an overturned bucket, eating a small pack of rice she had bought from a food seller. It was barely enough to fill her stomach, but she needed to save money for home. Home. The thought made her sigh. When the day's work ended, Adaora collected her pay, just enough for a few groceries. She hurried through the dusty streets to the small one-room house, where her parents waited. The smell of disinfectant and boiled herbs greeted her as she stepped inside. Her father lay on the bed, his thin frame covered with a faded blanket. He had been bedridden for months after a stroke left one side of his body weak. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "You're back, my daughter," he said softly, his voice weak. "Yes, Papa," Adaora replied, setting the food on the table. She walked over to help him sit up, carefully adjusting the pillows behind him. Her mother emerged from the small kitchen area, coughing into a cloth. She looked tired, her shoulders hunched from bending over the firewood stove. Even though she was sick herself, she still took care of her husband, feeding him, cleaning him, and making sure he took his medicine. "Ada, come and eat something before you faint," her mother said, her voice hoarse. "I will, Mama," Adaora answered, dishing food for her father first. She sat by the bed, feeding him spoon by spoon, wiping his mouth gently after each bite. When he was done, she helped him drink water, then adjusted the blanket again. Only then did she serve herself, eating slowly, her mind running through tomorrow's expenses. There were unpaid medical bills, the rent was due in 2 weeks, and her mother's cough was getting worse. After dinner, she helped her father use the bathroom, then washed his clothes by hand. Her back ached, but she didn't complain. Her mother tried to take over, but Adaora shook her head. "You've done enough, Mama. Go and rest," she insisted. Later that night, she sat by the small kerosene lamp, sewing a tear in her only decent dress. Her father was asleep, her mother lying beside him. The sound of the clock ticking filled the silence. Adaora looked at her calloused hands, the rough skin peeling from days of hard labor. She thought about the men at the construction site and their teasing. If they knew how heavy her burdens were, they would understand why she couldn't stop. Outside, the night air was cool, but inside, Adaora felt the weight of her world pressing down. She whispered a short prayer, asking God to keep her parents alive and give her strength for another day. Tomorrow, she would be back at the site, lifting blocks and carrying cement. Tomorrow, the teasing would continue, but as long as her parents needed her, she would keep going. The rainy season had arrived, and with it came cold nights that made Adaora's father's condition worse. His breathing had become shallow, his eyes often half-closed, even in the middle of the day. Adaora noticed how his hands trembled more than before when she fed him. "Papa, please try to eat," she said gently, holding a spoon to his lips. He shook his head weakly. "No appetite, my daughter." Her mother stood nearby, coughing quietly into a cloth, but still trying to smile. "Maybe later, Ada. Let him rest a little." Adaora looked at both of them and felt fear creeping in. She could see it, the thinness in her father's cheeks, the way his skin looked pale under the dim light. She had been buying his medicine in smaller doses because she couldn't afford the full prescription anymore. The money from the construction site was barely enough to feed them. Every day after work, she hurried home with groceries, sometimes skipping her own meals so they could eat. Her clothes grew looser, her slippers wore thinner. The teasing at the construction site continued, but she had no energy to respond anymore. One night, the rain fell heavily, drumming on the zinc roof. Adaora sat by her father's bed, holding his hand. He looked at her for a long time, his lips moving, as if he wanted to speak. Finally, in a faint voice, he whispered, "Ada, take care of your mother, even when I'm gone." Tears filled her eyes. "Papa, please don't talk like that. You'll be fine." But deep inside, she knew. She stayed by his side, listening to his breathing. Around midnight, he took a long, slow breath and didn't exhale again. "Papa," she called softly, shaking his shoulder. No response. Her heart pounded as she leaned closer, but his chest was still. Her mother, hearing her cry, rushed over, despite her weak legs. She touched her husband's face, then sank to the floor, sobbing quietly. Adaora knelt there in shock, her tears mixing with the sound of rain outside. They buried him 2 days later in a small cemetery not far from home. Adaora paid for the coffin and burial arrangements with money borrowed from a church member. The debt weighed on her, but her grief was heavier. Her mother's cough grew worse after the burial. She could barely walk without holding onto the wall. Still, she tried to cook and clean, telling Adaora she didn't want to be a burden. But Adaora could see the truth. Her mother was fading. One morning, Adaora returned from the construction site with some bread and tea leaves. She found her mother lying on the bed, eyes closed, her breathing slow. Adaora rushed to her side. "Mama, please drink something," she pleaded, shaking her gently. Her mother opened her eyes just a little and smiled faintly. "I'm proud of you, Ada," she whispered. "You've been a good daughter. Better than I deserved." "No, Mama, don't say that. Please, just rest. I'll take you to the clinic." But before Adaora could help her up, her mother's head tilted slightly, her hand slipping from Adaora's grasp. The room went silent. Adaora froze, her mind refusing to accept it. "Mama," she whispered, shaking her again. But her mother didn't move. The truth hit her like a hammer. She was gone. She buried her mother beside her father, a day later. Standing between the two fresh graves, Adaora felt like the ground had been pulled from under her. She was truly alone now. No siblings, no parents, no one to call family. That night she sat in the empty house, the silence pressing in on her. There was no one to cook for, no one to talk to, just her and the sound of her own breathing. She thought about her life, endless hard work, poverty, and now, this emptiness. A deep loneliness settled in her chest, and for the first time, she wondered if her life had any meaning at all. 2 weeks had passed since Adaora buried her parents. The small house felt like a hollow shell now, filled only with her memories and the faint smell of the herbs her mother used to boil. Adaora spent her days sitting outside on a low stool, staring into space, unsure of what to do next. One hot afternoon, she heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. A woman stepped out, dressed in a brightly colored wrapper with gold earrings that swayed as she walked. It was Auntie Rose, her mother's elder sister. Adaora had not seen her in over 3 years. "Adaora," Auntie Rose called warmly, spreading her arms. "My poor child, I heard what happened. Chai, life is cruel." Adaora stood up slowly, managing a weak smile. "Good afternoon, Auntie." They sat together in the small living room. Auntie Rose looked around with a sigh. "You can't live like this, Ada. You're too young to waste your life here. I came with good news." Adaora's tired eyes lifted slightly. "Good news?" "Yes," Auntie Rose said, leaning forward. "I can take you to Ghana. There's a good job waiting for you there. Steady pay, decent place to stay. You'll be able to send money home. Well, to take care of yourself now." For a moment, Adaora hesitated. She barely knew anything about Ghana, but the thought of leaving this empty house behind and starting fresh was tempting. "Are you sure, Auntie?" "Of course," Auntie Rose said with a confident smile. "I would never mislead you. We'll leave in 2 days. Start packing your things." Adaora had very little to pack, just a few clothes and her mother's headscarf, which she folded neatly into a small bag. On the morning of the journey, she locked the house, handed the key to a neighbor for safekeeping, and followed Auntie Rose to the bus park. The trip to Ghana was long and exhausting. They sat in an overcrowded commercial bus, squeezed between strangers, with sacks of goods piled on the roof. The first day, they traveled for hours under the heat, stopping only at roadside stalls where the food was too expensive for Adaora to buy. By nightfall, they slept in a noisy lodge near the border, the thin mattress smelling of dust and sweat. The second day, the road was worse, full of potholes that made the bus shake violently. Adaora's back ached and her legs felt numb. She kept reminding herself that it was worth it. A good job was waiting at the end of this journey. On the third day, they finally entered Accra, Ghana's capital city. Tall buildings rose in the distance, the streets buzzing with cars and people. Adaora's heart lifted slightly. Maybe this really was the start of something better. They took a taxi to a small apartment building. Inside, the rooms were cramped but cleaner than what Adaora expected. Auntie Rose showed her a small corner with a mattress on the floor. "You can stay here for now," she said. "Rest today. Tomorrow, we'll talk about your new job." That night, Adaora lay on the mattress, staring at the ceiling. She thought about how far she had come. 3 days on the road, crossing borders, all for the hope of a better life. She silently thanked her auntie for helping her and prayed that this new beginning would finally take away the pain of her past. She didn't know that the real reason she had been brought here would shatter that hope in less than 48 hours. The next morning, Adaora woke up to the smell of fried eggs and tea. Auntie Rose was in the small kitchen, humming softly. "Good morning, Ada," she greeted with a smile. "Eat and get your strength up. You'll need it for work." Adaora sat down at the small table, eating gratefully. "So, Auntie, what kind of job is it?" Is it in a shop? Or maybe cleaning? Auntie Rose gave a short laugh. Ah, don't worry about that now. You'll see soon enough. Just be ready to make good money. Adara thought nothing of it at first. She finished breakfast and began folding her few clothes neatly. Around midday, Auntie Rose left the house, saying she had an errand to run. It wasn't until the next evening that things became strange. Adara was sitting in the small living room when Auntie Rose came in, followed by a tall, middle-aged man wearing expensive cologne and a wide grin. "Ada," Auntie Rose said cheerfully, "this is Mr. Menson. He's a good friend of mine. He will be your first client." "Client?" Adara repeated, confused. "Yes," Auntie said, her smile fixed. "You'll spend the night with him. He will pay you well. This is how the job works." The words hit Adara like a slap. "Spend the night? You mean—" Auntie Rose's smile dropped. Ah, don't pretend you don't understand. This is easy work. You're young, beautiful, and men will pay for your time. Forget all that block carrying you used to do in Nigeria. This pays far better." Adaora's heart pounded. "Auntie, I didn't come here for this. You said it was a decent job." "And this is a decent job," Auntie Rose snapped, her voice turning cold. "Don't be ungrateful. Do you know how many girls are begging me to bring them here? You should be thanking me." "I can't do this," Adaora said firmly, stepping back. The man looked annoyed. "She's not interested. Why waste my time?" "Leave it to me," Auntie said to him. "Come back tomorrow." After he left, Auntie Rose turned on Adaora, her voice like ice. "You think you're better than the rest? Let me tell you something. You are nothing here. No papers, no money, no family. If you don't do as I say, you'll be on the streets by tomorrow." "I'd rather be on the streets than do this," Adaora replied, her voice shaking. Auntie Rose glared at her for a long moment, then let out a sharp laugh. "Fine. Let's see how long you last." The next morning, true to her word, she threw Adaora out. No money, no food, not even time to gather her belongings. She shoved her out of the door, slammed it shut, and locked it. Adaora stood in the dusty street, the heat of the afternoon sun, burning her skin. She had nowhere to go, no idea what to do. Her small hope of starting fresh in Ghana had just been crushed, replaced with a fear she had never felt before. That night she slept in a corner near a closed shop, using her scarf as a pillow. The city that had looked so bright and full of promise now felt cold and dangerous. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the darkest days of her life. The days that followed were the hardest Adaora had ever known. The first morning after Auntie Rose threw her out, she walked the streets of Accra, knocking on shop doors and asking for work. Most people didn't even let her finish speaking before shaking their heads. A few listened, but asked for papers she didn't have. One shop owner laughed in her face. By afternoon, the heat was unbearable. Her slippers were worn thin, and the soles of her feet ached from walking. She had not eaten since the day before. Passing a food stall, the smell of fried plantain made her stomach cramp painfully. She stood there for a while, watching people eat, but she had no money. That night, she found a spot near a closed supermarket, curling up in the shadow of the doorway. Her scarf served as both pillow and blanket. The ground was hard, and mosquitoes buzzed around her. She barely slept. On the second day, hunger became sharper. Her lips were dry, her throat sore. She drank water from a public tap, trying to fool her stomach into feeling full. Later, she spotted a bakery worker throwing out stale bread. She rushed to pick it from the dustbin, brushing off the dirt before biting into it. Tears filled her eyes, not from the taste, but from the shame. By the third day, she felt weak. Her head spun each time she stood. People walked past without looking at her. The city's noise felt far away, as if she was fading out of the world. That evening she sat on a low pavement, staring at her hands. The calluses from the construction site in Nigeria seemed pointless now. She had fought so hard, and for what? Her parents were gone. The only family she had betrayed her. And now she was alone in a foreign city, starving. For the first time, Adaora began to think there was no point in living. Her eyes wandered to a big tree she had passed before, on a quiet road where almost no one went. She thought of the rope she had seen earlier that day. Someone had thrown it behind a workshop. She could end the pain quickly. No more hunger. No more shame. As the sky turned orange with the setting sun, she walked to where she had seen the rope. It was still there. She picked it up, feeling its rough texture in her hands. Her heart pounded, but her mind felt strangely calm. She began walking toward the lonely road, her legs heavy but steady. Each step felt final, like she was moving further away from everything she had ever known. She thought of her parents. Maybe in the next life, they would all be together again. When she reached the tree, she stood still for a moment, staring at its thick, low branch. She imagined tying the rope, closing her eyes, and letting go. But just as she was about to step forward, something caught her eye. A man lay sprawled across the dusty ground, a few meters away. He was dressed in a dark suit, his shirt stained with blood. His face was pale, his eyes closed. There was a small wound on his chest. He had been shot. Adaora froze, the rope still in her hand. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Then instinct took over. She dropped the rope and ran to him, kneeling beside his body. "Sir, sir, can you hear me?" she cried, shaking him gently. He didn't respond. She looked around desperately. There was no one in sight. Taking a deep breath, she bent down, lifted his arm over her shoulder, and began to carry him on her back. Each step was a struggle, his weight pressing down on her own body weak from days without food. Still, she pushed forward. Somewhere deep inside, the part of her that wanted to live had returned. Adaora's knees trembled under his weight, but she refused to stop. The man's head rested limply against her back, and every few seconds she could hear a faint, shallow breath. His suit was fine fabric, the kind she had only ever seen on wealthy men in passing, now darkened with blood. She kept glancing over her shoulder, hoping for help, but the road stretched empty on both sides. Her chest burned, her arms ached, and her breath came in sharp gasps. Still, she told herself over and over, just a little further, don't let him die. Finally, she heard the distant sound of an engine. Turning, she saw an old sedan approaching. She stepped into the middle of the road, waving frantically. "Please stop! Help us!" she shouted. The driver slowed down, a man in his late 40s with curious eyes. "What happened?" he asked, stepping out. "He's been shot," Adaora panted. "We need to get him to a hospital now." The driver hurried over, helping Adaora lift the unconscious man into the back seat. She climbed in beside him, holding his head steady as the driver sped towards the nearest hospital. When they arrived, nurses rushed him into the emergency room. Adaora followed, but was stopped at the door. "Only medical staff can enter," one nurse said firmly. I found him. Please, let me stay close," Adaora begged. "You can wait outside," the nurse replied, then disappeared into the room. The hours that followed felt endless. Adaora sat in the cold hospital corridor, her legs pulled to her chest. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Each time the door swung open, she looked up, but it was never news about him. By evening, a nurse came out carrying his bloodied jacket and shirt. Adaora saw the bullet hole and felt a chill run through her. Whoever had done this had meant to kill him. She stayed through the night, dozing off in the hard plastic chair. In the morning, she bought a small loaf of bread with the last coins she had, but instead of eating it, she kept it aside, just in case he woke up and was hungry. 2 days passed before a doctor finally approached her. "Are you a relative?" he asked. Adaora shook her head. "No, I just found him." The doctor smiled faintly. "Then he owes you his life. He's out of danger now, but still weak. You can see him for a short while." Her heart pounded as she followed the doctor into the ward. The man lay on the bed, pale but breathing steadily. His eyes were closed, but she could see the rise and fall of his chest. She sat quietly in a chair beside him. An hour later, his fingers twitched. Slowly, he opened his eyes, blinking at the bright light. His gaze moved around the room, finally settling on her. Who are you?" His voice was hoarse. "My name is Adaora," she said softly. "I found you on the road. You were bleeding. I carried you until someone stopped to help." He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to piece together her words. "You carried me? In your condition?" His eyes moved over her thin frame, her worn clothes. She shrugged. "I couldn't leave you there to die." For a moment silence hung between them. Then a faint smile touched his lips. "My name is Kwame Mensah." Adaora nodded. "Nice to meet you. Properly, I mean." Kwame's gaze softened. "Adaora, thank you." Kwame was still weak from his injuries, but the first thing he asked for after waking was the hospital phone. Adaora helped him adjust the pillows and placed it in his hands. With trembling fingers, he dialed a number from memory. "Mama, it's me." His voice cracked. "I'm alive. I'm at Ridge Hospital." There was a gasp on the other end, followed by hurried words. He spoke briefly, then hung up, leaning back with a sigh. "They're coming." Less than an hour later, the door burst open. A woman in her 60s rushed in, tears streaming down her cheeks, followed by a young woman in her late 20s. "Kwame!" his mother cried, leaning over to embrace him gently. "We've been looking for you for days. No one knew where you were. I feared the worst." His sister bent down to hug him too, her voice shaky. "Brother, we thought we'd lost you." Kwame nodded weakly toward Adaora. "She's the reason I'm here today. She found me when I was bleeding on the road, carried me until help came." Both women turned to Adaora at once. His mother stepped closer, taking her hand in both of hers. "My dear, thank you. You don't know the depth of what you've done for us. God will bless you." His sister added warmly, "You're family to us now." They had come carrying large food baskets, steaming jollof rice, fried chicken, grilled fish, ripe plantain, fresh juice, and loaves of bread. The rich aroma filled the room, making Adaora's stomach tighten in hunger. She hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Kwame's mother noticed immediately. "Come, my dear, eat with us, please." At first, Adaora hesitated, but their gentle insistence broke through her shyness. She accepted a plate and ate slowly, each bite filling not just her stomach, but a part of her soul that had been empty for too long. As they ate, Kwame's mother and sister asked simple questions: where she came from, how long she'd been in Ghana, but Adaora kept her answers short. She didn't want to pour her painful past onto the table. They stayed for hours, fussing over Kwame, adjusting his blanket and making sure he had everything he needed. When they finally stood to leave, his mother turned to Adaora. "When my son is discharged, you must visit our home," she said. "You saved his life. You're welcome in our family any time." Adaora gave a small, grateful smile. In her heart, she couldn't remember the last time anyone had made her feel this wanted. For the first time in months, she began to think that maybe, just maybe, life was not done with her yet. 2 weeks later, Kwame had recovered enough to leave the hospital. True to her word, Madame Efua invited Adaora to their home. It was a warm, welcoming place, filled with laughter and the smell of home-cooked meals. Adaora helped in the kitchen, joined family conversations, and found herself smiling more than she had in a long time. One quiet afternoon, Kwame sat alone in the garden, the shade of a tall mango tree keeping him cool as he read a folded newspaper. The soft rustle of leaves was the only sound until Madame Efua's footsteps approached. She pulled out a chair beside him, her eyes following his gaze to the newspaper before settling on his face. "You've been quiet lately, Kwame." "I'm just catching up on the news, Mama," he said, with a faint smile. Her tone softened. "I've been watching the way you and Adaora talk, the way she treats you, the respect in her voice. She's not just a good girl. She will make a good wife." Kwame lowered the paper slowly, studying his mother. "Mama, I mean it," she continued. "Girls like her are rare these days. She's not after your money, she has a kind heart, and I see peace in her presence. Don't waste time thinking too much. Sometimes God sends the right person in an unexpected way." Kwame's lips curved into a small smile, but he didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the kitchen window, where Adaora's faint laughter drifted out. "Let's see what the future holds, Mama," he said finally. Madame Efua smiled knowingly and patted his shoulder before heading back inside. That Saturday evening, Kwame surprised Adaora with an invitation. "Let's go out for dinner. Just you and me," he said, smiling. Adaora hesitated. "Are you sure you're strong enough?" He chuckled. "I'm fine, and besides, I owe you a nice evening." They drove to one of Accra's finest hotels, its entrance glowing with golden light. The lobby smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers. Kwame led her to a quiet table near a large window overlooking the city. After placing their order, Kwame leaned back in his chair, his expression turning serious. "Adaora, I never told you what happened the night you found me." She looked at him curiously. "I was wondering, but I didn't want to ask." "I had gone to check on my new farm in the countryside," he began. "Everything was fine until I was on my way back. Just before the toll gate, a car blocked my path. Men jumped out with guns. They dragged me out of my car, took my phone and wallet, and demanded the keys. I handed them over, but one of them shot me anyway. They left me there to die." Adaora's heart tightened. "That's terrible. They could have killed you." "They almost did," he said quietly. "But then you appeared." He smiled faintly. "You were my miracle that night." She lowered her eyes, embarrassed but touched. Their food arrived, and the conversation drifted to lighter topics. Her favorite meals, his childhood memories, the best places in Accra. Adaora found herself laughing, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in months. After dinner, they stepped out into the warm night air. Kwame was about to call for his driver when Adaora froze mid-step. A few meters away, near the hotel entrance, stood Auntie Rose. She was dressed in a glittering gown, her hair neatly styled, holding the arm of a well-dressed man. Behind her were 4 young girls, each barely in their 20s, dressed for a night out. Auntie Rose's eyes landed on Adaora, and for a moment She stopped breathing. Adaora's own heartbeat quickened. She could see the recognition in her aunt's eyes, followed by something else. Fear. Kwame, noticing the tension, glanced between them. Adaora, do you know her? Auntie Rose's gaze shifted to Kwame, and her expression changed instantly. Shock, then calculation. She clearly recognized him as a wealthy, influential man. Her grip on her companion's arm tightened. Adaora didn't answer Kwame right away. She simply stared at her aunt, memories of betrayal flooding back, the lies, the hunger, the nights on the street. The air between them felt thick, charged with something unspoken. Kwame looked at Adaora again. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low. But before Adaora could reply, Auntie Rose forced a tight smile, nodded slightly at them, and quickly led her group toward a waiting car. Adaora's eyes followed the car until it disappeared into the night. She felt her hands trembling. Kwame placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Adaora, tell me." She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "That was my aunt, the one who brought me to Ghana." His brow furrowed. "And?" Her lips pressed together, holding back the storm of truth she wanted to release.